So we're back, and today I was wanting to talk with you, Brianna, about recognizing with our horses what it looks like when it's not a training issue, because I think we have such a tendency to assume that everything that our horses are doing, every behavior issue we might be experiencing, every time that they are, quote, misbehaving or not doing what we wanted them to do, if they're having difficulty for the farrier, if they are struggling to be led safely to and from the barn, like all these different common behavior problems from the ground or even in the saddle. I thought it'd be really great to talk about today the kind of how we go about evaluating and going through the process of discovering whether or not this is truly a training issue or if it's actually coming from how the horse is feeling and something going on with them physically or even a deeper rooted thing. So yeah, I now that would be a really good conversation to have today. What would you say is your kind of your insights or your process of elimination even, or how do you go about problem solving, whether or not this is truly a training issue or if it's how the horse is feeling or something that's going on with the horse beyond training.
Yeah, I would love to talk about that. This is one of my favorite topics of conversation, and it's so important as we dive deeper into equine communication and learning how to support them holistically and being really mindful of making everything an enjoyable experience for them. And before I dive into some of these signs and ways I look at training versus bodywork versus hoof care issues. I wanted to say that even if there's not a clear training issue, quote unquote, every horse benefits from bodywork. And you'd be surprised to see training issues resolve or training improve even if you weren't seeing a clear issue crop up before. When horses are feeling better and sounder in their bodies, everything just goes so much smoother. Training progress is exponentially faster. And it's just really important to consider that we don't want to wait until there becomes a really clear acute issue, because that means we waited too long. And there's a lot that we can do preventatively to help support our horses to feeling their best.
Yeah,
Now that
the well, I was just going to share a quick story. Actually, I just had a consult today this morning, and while, the main concern that was brought up was that the horse was struggling with potentially some separation anxiety and leading to and from the barn, the scary area, his green zones where he feels safe, where he can lead safely with his human, is very small area that they have to work in. And so trying to expand that. And we talked about training early on with some, ideas and some different suggestions. And this was actually a second behavior consult that we had on this. But quickly we dove into, well, what's going on with the rest of the horse's management? What's going on with the rest of the horse's, care? And I really was able to hone in really quickly on potential nutrient deficiencies. So mineral deficiencies, just the diet not being quite balanced. There wasn't 24/7 forage. There was just some things that we could do to help the horse in that capacity, because a horse that's not being fed right is not going to be able to think right, and like think not right, but you know what I mean, like thinking well and processing information and learning new things and feeling safe in their environment if their body's screaming at them that something's wrong. So we could also add in diet here too. And of course, you are excellent about this as well. Diet, hoof care, body work, everything that goes into it. It's not just about the training or body work or just hoof care or just nutrition. It all works together.
absolutely. And and we do need to work together as professionals, right? It's never just a bodywork issue. It's never just a hoof care issue. This is where trainers come in and can support along with the vets and the dentists and the farriers and the body workers to really create that whole horse picture to support the horse in front of us.
Absolutely. So yeah, walk us through your process of kind of how you, when it comes to working with a horse, like let's say it's one of your own, even not even a client's horse, just one of your own, and all of a sudden your horse is, he's been doing fine for hoof care, but today he's not. How do you break down and work through that process of elimination and support your horse, even if you don't know and don't discover the answer necessarily? How would you just go about that process?
For sure. So, in my mind, there's a difference between an acute issue that's come up or a long-term problem that we're seeing where there's just a failure to progress or trouble progressing in training. So if an acute issue comes up, I'm going to look at all of the situations that arose for the horse earlier in that day. Are they getting enough sleep? What is the weather and the uh, like their paddock situation like? Was there any aggression or resource guarding that was happening in and amongst their friends? Was there any like construction or loud noises, or did I see them slip and fall? Is the footing really bad? Were they moving less? Are they sleeping less? All of those things kind of come into my mind when I'm evaluating a training challenge. Ideally, I would love if it's my own horse, then I would have the opportunity to watch them move, do a little bit of assessment static and dynamically. And that just means like assessing them hands on while they're standing, seeing if their posture has shifted at all, and then watching them in movement and seeing if there's any indicators of physical tension or discomfort. If that's what I'm finding, if that's what I've kind of narrowed in going through all those questions that I mentioned earlier, then I can offer them some bodywork support. And even in the act of offering them bodywork support, that further diagnoses what's going on. Because if I offer them bodywork support and then I go back into a training session and we're able to make progress and really get those clean reps and improve, increasing our criteria, then I know that there was something going on. And maybe it doesn't happen that day. Maybe they need some more support and it's not just a one session fixes everything, but that's kind of what goes through my head when I'm seeing an acute training challenge crop up.
For me, when I see an acute training challenge like that, because I'm not a trained body worker, although learning, so I can support my own herd and help clients and such. A lot of times, and this is how I'll advise my clients too, is to make adjustments. So we'll start troubleshooting, problem solving the antecedent arrangement. So how we've set up the environment. Did we change anything? Is today windy? Are we acting differently? Are we really anxious today? Are the horses, their companions too far away? Are we standing in a different location than we usually are? Are we asking something differently than we usually do? Are we holding the foot differently? And this is going back to the scenario being around the farrier and the hoof handling. And so I'll start problem solving these, and then I'll start seeing if I can break it down and make it simpler. Maybe usually they would hold the foot for a good couple of minutes before. Well, can we just ask them for a minute or 30 seconds even, and then set it down and then rebuild back up to the longer? So for me, I tend to go at it from more of a training perspective first. But if I'm not seeing immediate shifts in my horse's behavior, if we're not resolving that acute issue, if the horse doesn't go, oh, okay, yes, cool, we're back to how we were before, then I'm like, okay, this is deeper. We've got something else going on. And this is when I start reaching out to the other professionals on my team or start utilizing my own skills that I've been learning how to do as well, as far as body work goes. Or maybe I need to look for a cut or wound somewhere, or a new abscess that's cropped up, or start looking for different things that could be causing the horse discomfort. And I can offer the body work that I know how to do. And then if it's still continuing after that, we start looking at bringing on those team members to really help support. And this is, of course, an acute thing. So this is assuming that the horse has been fine with their hoof handling and doing well, but today we're not. So it's interesting, the different perspectives. Like I come at it more from that training side first. It sounds like quickly I'll make some adjustments. And I know you'll make these too. But I will process of elimination there. And then I'm like, okay, let's go look at a possible pain cause. And then from you, because you are a trained body worker and you practice this stuff on a daily basis, you're very quickly doing assessments physically and seeing how you can support the horse physically. And then, you're going to do that process of elimination. So what would happen if you did the bodywork support, you assessed them and found that they appeared normal from what you could tell? And I know we can never fully eliminate that they could be in pain. Like we can't tell a horse they're not in pain. But what happens when you do your normal process of elimination and you assess and you um, make any adjustments that you see you could do that day, and your horse still doesn't want to pick up the foot? Would you then jump to potentially this is something, not jump, but make that step towards maybe this is a training thing? Or would you still continue? Like, what would that look like for you?
I think it would be very dependent on how far we had progressed with this behavior
Yeah.
and how fine the horse had been previously. If it was a really well-proofed behavior that I have known that the horse is willing to offer in this case of hoof handling, if I've had no issues previously, then I'm less inclined to say training. However, if we're just starting with this behavior, or I've had off and on issues with it in the past, then I would be more inclined to look at it as a training issue. And it's not that taking the approach of thin slicing criteria and adjusting our antecedents is ineffective. I think it's very effective, but sometimes we can't look at it in isolation. We have to be willing to take that bigger picture and find the pieces that are impacting it. And at the end of the day, it can be more work for us as trainers, because if we're spending all this time thin slicing our criteria and going back every 3 sessions or so to readjust and rebuild from the beginning, there's something wrong. There's something that we're missing, and there's a piece to the puzzle that we need to find. And it's not that we're wasting our time, but
More information.
we need more information.
And even that constant relapsing is more information, right? And that brings us into the more chronic stuff going on, a more chronic problem where we keep having issues cropping back up. Like we make training progress and then we relapse, and we make training progress and then we relapse, and we make training progress and we relapse. This is where in a lot of cases, this is like, okay, we need to keep digging. There's a physical or something underlying that's not just training related. Now, of course, we can always learn more about training. We can adapt our techniques. I'm always growing as far as my training techniques go. And there has been horses where in the past, I've had to adapt my training techniques and learn more and go seek out other guidance from other professionals to adapt and bring in new training techniques to help this horse. And it was in that case training related, but simultaneously the whole time I'm constantly searching for there's a possible underlying cause. And to me, at this stage with those chronic issues, it becomes we're doing both at the same time. We're evaluating training, we're thin slicing criteria, we're making changes management wise, on and on. We're learning here and trying to make progress. But on the other hand, we're still constantly working with our team and looking for possible underlying causes. So we're doing both together until we come upon the answers. Hopefully we find them and we start making progress and we are able to support the horse where they're comfortable so that we can achieve this thing we're looking for.
For sure. And sometimes it's not about finding the answer. So for some horses, there isn't a clear answer. We just need to try every day to do better. So if you are in a situation with your horse where you feel like you've tried all these different things and you haven't happened upon an answer, that doesn't mean give up or your horse is just being bad, or your horse is just stupid or unable to learn or train.
Or that you're
Sometimes,
stupid or unable to learn how
right?
to train. That one too, people are really negative with themselves when they don't make progress with the training.
Totally. For some horses, it can be very complex, and there can be multiple different causes. And we don't always get to have an answer, and that's okay, because it's not about the answer. It's about supporting them to the best of our ability and enjoying and appreciating the journey to the best of our ability.
I have a horse here that you're very familiar with that is exactly this case, where I had somebody today ask me, well, what did you do to help her? And I was like, so let's rewind like 8 years and start on a long journey it's been modifying hoof care, it's been modifying nutrition, it's been learning body work, different modalities of body work, different modalities of other or different types of therapeutic support, learning how to manage her environment better, learning how to help her sleep better, learning how to train better and communicate with her better, learning how to be just a better trainer in general, withholding less, using less negative punishment, using less accidental adding of pressure. Then there's also the combination of she's just matured. We've got the hormones. They finally, they start to stabilize as they get older, and their body starts to feel a little bit more stabilized as they're not going through those growth spurts. And then we've got, anyway, it's just endless. We've even done different energy work with her and communication and just on and on and on of, oh, and she had different surgeries too. It's been a long, long journey, and she's doing so much better. But to write down, like, what did I do? Because everybody wants that
Yeah,
quick answer. They want that, okay, what's the one supplement I have to give? Or what's the one type of body work and how often do they need it to be okay? And unfortunately, as with everything in the horse world or in just in life in general, it's not that black and white. And there's not always a very simple answer. It's amazing when there is, because sometimes it happens. Like you just have to feed this way, or he just needs this type of food, or he just needs this type of pasture, and you're able to provide that, and then you get the solution and the horse is doing better for that specific issue. But very often it's not that easy. And the in trying to pin down when your horse does make progress or is feeling better, what specifically was the trick that did it, there isn't just one. We were talking about this recently. It's layered. It all works together to help heal the body. Yeah, and it's multifaceted, which is infuriating to people who want answers. I just want it now. I want to know so I can copy and paste to the next horse, which of course it wouldn't work for the next horse, probably exactly like that, because they have a totally different thing going on and they have a totally different learning history, different genetics, different life experiences. It's a never ending journey, right?
totally. And every horse is different. And when you can view it as a never-ending journey rather than a pursuit of finding that answer and finding that destination, and then everything's going to be perfect and rainbows and butterflies, it's just not going to happen. Sorry, guys. That's not what life with horses. They're amazing and beautiful and they teach us so much, but it's never going to be smooth sailing.
And that's kind of, it's so funny how we know this, but also we're not willing to accept it or really embrace it. And every day is different. Like some days I come out to the barn, I'm like, yeah, this is just the process. This is just how it is. I'm all happy. And the other days I'm like, oh, I just want the answer. I just want you to be better today. And it's frustrating when it's not that way. And so it will have its ups and downs too, especially when we have any kind of relapses or we thought things were going better and all of a sudden they're not. And because we have a big relapse, which is to be expected. And even from a behavior perspective, if it is like your horse's problem behaviors or behaviors you're just not really enjoying, or the horse, it doesn't matter what it is, but from a behavior perspective, we know how the brain works. Those behaviors don't just disappear one day. They don't just go away. And so, and this probably happens in the body too, where it's going to resurface. We're going to have a bad day that's going to come back up. We're going to have these things come back up. And then it'll get better. And then we'll go hopefully a little bit longer before we have that relapse again. And then we'll have that moment, we'll help them through it, and then we'll go longer, hopefully, the next time. And then the idea is we're going longer and longer stretches of time without these relapses. And that's really what we're trying to achieve, not a complete absence of that behavior overnight, right? It's not just like a light switch that turns off. And I mean, you tell me, I mean, I would imagine it's probably a lot like that. And I mean, I've experienced it with my own horses with their healing and body work from a physical perspective too.
Yeah, the healing journey is never linear. And this is where horses are really beautiful guides and teachers for us in that they stay in the present moment. So when your horse is having a bad day, it takes a toll on you as a caregiver. And that is a beautiful thing that you care so much. But the next day, when your horse is having a good day, they are not stressing over the bad day they had yesterday. That's what we humans do. And I count myself as one fully. But listen to your horse, meet them where they're at, and take that guiding and that lesson from them and really support them where they're at that day. Don't dwell on the horse they were yesterday or 2 days ago or a week ago because it's not the same horse.
Yeah. But at the same time, as well, when you are in a bad, and I say bad subjectively, when we're having a rough time, it can be also sometimes easy to just kind of hope it just goes away, like cross our fingers and just hope. And so being proactive is it's not a bad thing either. It's just like you said, not dwelling on the bad days,
Hmm.
moving forward and being proactive about helping supporting the horse and yourself and taking those steps forward, but not just like carrying those bad day baggages around with you all the time.
Yeah. Because your horse picks up on that.
For sure. For sure. So yeah, they'll tell you when you're carrying stuff around with you. They're like, that's always a fun learning journey as well. When your horses communicate with you, like, okay, it's time to move on. Like, why are we holding on to this?
Yeah. No, they really are the best teachers. And once they know, you know, it's very much like training where they go through an unpacking process. Once they know, you'll listen to their voice and that it's not all just behavior. We see the same thing happen in their unpacking from their physical trauma,
Mm,
right? When we're going through that training process, they'll be unpacking emotional trauma and learning how to say no. And once they're aware that we can recognize that and see that, then they're on it. Then they're like, nope, I'm
mm,
calling you out on this. I said, no, we're not doing it. The same things happen in their bodywork journey where they start to realize that you're recognizing, oh, that shoulder looked a little bit stiff today. Oh, they're standing a little bit funny today. And they'll call you out. They'll be like, nope, I see you seeing me.
what does it look like? So I guess for everybody listening, what are some examples of what that might look like? I know you're not gonna be able to cover everything, but what are some examples that you've experienced where a horse is calling you out on that?
What I typically see that present itself as, and this is going back to that, this is where it gets tricky. Okay, here we go. So acute training challenges that are coming up could just be part of the unpacking process. Everything's going fine. You think that your horse knows this behavior 100%. And then one day you're like, where did this go? I thought my horse knew how to pick up its feet. It might not be a physical challenge. It might not be a training challenge. It might not be a weather challenge. It might just be that you have now put enough pennies in the piggy bank that your horse knows I can tell my human how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And today I don't want to pick up my feet.
Yep.
And whether that's because they have emotional trauma that we need to address with training, or whether they have physical trauma that we need to address with body work. Also, we can address emotional trauma with
Yeah.
body work, but that's a rabbit hole we can
Yeah,
dive into
yeah,
another
yeah.
day. Um, we just have to listen to them and show them that them calling us out is listened to, and it's really easy to get into our humanness of like, oh, but you picked up your feet yesterday, come on, can
Mm.
we just do this? It's in your highest and best interest, please let me pick up your feet. And obviously there's going to be emergencies where we're going to have to, but if it's not an emergency, let them show you how they feel.
So to me, that stands out as like them starting to explore communicating with you and using their behavior to express how they're feeling and that they, no, I don't want to pick up my feet today. And basically asking you or demanding that you respect what you set out, which was that you were going to give them that option, that you were going to give them a choice. And you've put all these deposits into the piggy bank, that trust piggy bank, and they're like, okay, I trust you to listen to me. Here we go. Right.
Yeah.
The ways that I've experienced with horses where it's them calling me out on maybe carrying a lot of, like we were talking about, carrying a lot of like the emotional baggage from having a bad day the day
Mm-hmm.
before, or um, just worrying, or maybe having too high of expectation, like too much intention, too much expectation, projecting onto them a lot,
Yeah.
having really high, just all these things. Some of my horses will suddenly step away, like move away from me. So they will like as I walk into the paddock or wherever we're going, and they're like, now I'm going to keep my distance over here. And that's super unusual for that horse. That stands out to me as their behavior, like, no, you have a lot going on. I need space.
Yeah.
Another way is we might see an increase of a type of behaviors that are distance increasing signals. So using a tail swish, even lifting a leg, snapping, or using their teeth at all, head shakes, like basically like move away from me and don't be that close to me or don't do this thing. Or some horses will just their nervous energy will increase and they will be more flighty. Everything is spooky, they're hyper vigilant, things like that. And that could actually be coming from what's going on between them and me. And if I take that step back and like recenter and get myself right and then I go back in, we're much better. So those are some of the ways that I've experienced when my horses are kind of how I think of like calling me out on how I'm doing or what I'm bringing to the interaction. And they're like, no, 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 we're not doing that. Would you say that
Right.
you've experienced those kinds of things too?
100%. Horses are so sensitive to an agenda.
Hmm. Yeah.
And when you're not fully present and when you're trying to force them to be something that they're not, or it's all fine and great to learn all these things about horses, but we can get into a really like hyper focused tunnel vision where we are analyzing and assessing our horse's every move, and they don't always want that. It's
Yeah. I have one horse where I can definitely tell, well, a couple, but one in particular, as soon as we start to hone in on like that area is sore, she's like, no, it's not. No, it's
yeah,
not. They can become very protective. That's a natural defense, natural
yeah,
protect. Um, yeah, that's so interesting. And that would be so easy to interpret as a training problem, right? So like let's say I'm leading or walking up to my horse in the pasture and to go put their halter on and I'm sitting here watching, how they're standing and I'm evaluating posture and I've got all these ideas and if, I'm kind of being critical, right, of her as I'm walking up with the halter to put it on and she's like and doesn't really cooperatively offer, to put the halter on and all that. I mean like, oh, we have a training problem. She doesn't want to put her halter on when in reality has to do with how I was really hyper assessing her and being hypercritical of her as I was approaching and going to do this other thing. That would be possibly another way that they can communicate that.
yeah. A lot of it, a lot of it does come down to us and our emotional state and where we are at, which is cool because we can control that, but it's
Mostly.
also hard to hear sometimes.
It takes work. It's not something that you're going to just be able to turn on and off. Like for me, it's just every day we do a little bit better, right? I'm
Yeah,
not sure how this conversation turned into evaluating ourselves, going from whether it's a training or a physical issue. We somehow moved into, well, what about us and how are we showing up in that experience and what are we bringing to the table? It's great. I love it because it does. So much of it comes back to that.
right.
But
Welcome to Conversations with Adele and Brianna. They go like this.
we're going to title this ADHD Conversations with Adele and Brianna
I love it.
about horses, ADHD
Yeah.
conversations.
We can
That's so,
stay on that topic. Don't worry, guys.
yeah. That one. Oh, wait, which topic? The ADHD topic?
Horses,
Horses.
horses.
Oh,
Our
yes.
conversations will revolve in general around horses, but the direction they may take from that central point is up to
Who knows? Who
could be
knows? This could easily go like 20 different ways. We could start diving into like learning how to trim hooves. We could start talking about, yeah, I won't get us started because my brain is already ticking about all the other ones. Let's go
right.
ahead and wrap that one up here because, again, we could go on for another hour, 5 hours, 2 days probably, if you let us.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys have any questions that you have for myself or Brianna on body work, on value or helping understanding whether or not your horse is struggling with a training or behavior issue, or if it's a physical issue or something else, feel free to ask us. We would be more than happy to answer and to help out as best we can. And yeah, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, guys.